It is time for another Christian review of regular books, and today we are discussing Kindred by Octavia Butler. As always, if you haven't seen one of these videos before, here's how it's going to go down. First, I do my regular review, what you know and love to expect from a book review, and my own personal opinion of the book. But then we're going to get into the Christian review, and that's where we go over the basic pieces that may or may not have a fellow believer or anyone wanting to read it. I do this so that you can make the decision that's best for you. And if you want more detailed information about these Christian reviews, you can check out the video that's pinned to the top of the playlist. It also should be here somewhere, if I did it right. So check those out. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you can stay up to date on all of the things that we're doing with my Christian reviews, as well as our podcast, The Journey We Share. We are posting all the time, and we don't want you to miss a single video. Now let's go ahead and get into my regular review. Kindred by Octavia Butler is like a time traveling story, and I love a good time travel story, okay? I love the idea of time travel. I also really loved the uniqueness of how this story was told, like the way she time traveled in the story was so interesting. The parts that I tended to struggle with is around the 70% mark, I started to feel like it was repetitive, like what the character was doing, when and how she was returning, because it's not all in one time. Like she is jumping back and forth between her time and the time of slavery and oppression. It was really interesting, but it did feel like we were getting a little bit on the same train, and I just wanted the train to change direction. I additionally did struggle a little bit with the way that this main character assimilated to this slavery and oppressive environment. The character did express shock and surprise by her own ability to assimilate to the experience. However, I think that a modern Black woman here in America today would actually probably have more frustration, emotional depth, and experiences with the oppression and with the experience of becoming a slave one day and then being free the next day. Obviously, I cannot speak for Black women since I am not one. However, as a woman, if I were suddenly sent back into the 1600s in which I had no rights and I was just a man's property, I could not envision myself becoming very easily assimilated with it. And I would definitely speak up and try to find my way to freedom. And that is not the experience throughout this book. It felt like the character, although she did struggle with it some, really did kind of step into the role when she was there. So I think that story was a little bit challenging. Despite how I felt about those pieces, overall the writing was immaculate. Like, oh my gosh, does Octavia Butler know how to write a book? And I actually think that this would have been so good if the series had continued when they created the series, because I think that there's a lot of potential to expand in some really unique and cool ways. And I was heartbroken by the story, by the character development, by the way that the whole world worked. It was beautifully done, and I rated it 4 stars. Now let's go ahead and get into my Christian review. The first category I always love to touch on is smut or spice, because it's very popular, and there's no explicitly descriptive scenes of smut or spice. There are a fair bit of scenes in which a woman is assaulted by a man and sexually assaulted, and so although it's not described, you do get the experience or the after effect of that in like descriptive quality, like how their body looks, etc., etc. So if that is something that for you feels too uncomfortable, it's something good to keep in mind. The second category is if there's any explicit language, and although there is not a ton of explicit language in words that we would necessarily use today, there is a lot of use of the N-word, and that makes sense due to the storyline, right? We're talking about slavery in America at a time in which that word was the name of someone who was a slave who was Black. However, it is something that sometimes people don't want to read about now that that word is taboo and inappropriate and like not to be used. So I have definitely had people who have said like, I do not want to read a book when they regularly are using that word. And so if that's something for you, it's something good to keep in mind. The last category is gore or violence. And again, as I mentioned earlier, there are pretty intense scenes. There's some violence and even some gore that's more described. There is just a fair bit of the reality of abuse that was happening against slaves during that time and how treatment was of them, and able to be on a regular basis, like that there was no I blinked about it, like that was just what was happening. For the age range, I think that this is probably an appropriate book for someone ages 15 and up. This is stuff they're learning about in history, and this is an important thing for them to learn. Again, I think there should be a little bit of like a warning label that you discuss with your kid if you're concerned about the use of some of these words, as well as an understanding about like, this is what happened. These are the types of things that happened. Even though this is a fiction book, it is depicting a very real situation in our history, and being able to have an open dialogue with your kid about it. As always, you can see what I'm reading and rating in real time by following me on Goodreads. I'm also on Instagram and on TikTok, and I do have my own YouTube channel. You can find all the ways to stay in contact with me, send me something, or any of the links that I just mentioned at the description box down below, so go ahead and check that out. And I cannot wait to see you on the next one.